In a decentralized network like Solana, no one device can dictate network transactions. So how do we decide when a transaction is valid? Well, this reminds us of the double spend problem that was famously solved by Satoshi and Bitcoin, which is that this user wants to spend the money that's in their wallet, and so if they try to spend that money twice, telling two different parts of the network that they have sent that money to two different targets. Well, if this was a centralized model, this involves a bank, and that bank would say, hey, you've only got $5 or $10 in your bank account. You can't send it to two different people. And so they would decide maybe that this one is invalid, probably because it came through second. Well, we are living in a decentralized world, and so we don't have one entity that can identify that. And so the solution, in order to decide where that money actually went, is going to be based on the concept of consensus, where the network comes together to make these kinds of decisions. Now, consensus is going to look different on different blockchain networks, especially proof of work versus something like Solana and proof of stake. Specifically, proof of work is going to use a method known as longest chain, and there are several algorithms behind it in order to prevent the forking of the network. Solana and proof of stake in general is going to have to do something different. Specifically, Solana is going to use that Tower BFT that we talked about earlier on in a different video here inside of this series. So if you haven't seen that video, be sure to check it out here on our channel. We talk a lot about what exactly BFT is, and ultimately it's a way for a bunch of untrusted devices to be able to come together and to make a decision. So how exactly does this work? Well, the Solana network is run by a bunch of devices known as validators. The validators are going to produce the blocks that ultimately show what transactions are official and which ones have been validated on the network. But that's not the only responsibility of the validators. For example, we might have a validator out here that produces a block, or at least proposes a block to the rest of the network. So what are these other validators doing on the network? Well, the other responsibility is to provide votes. They're going to vote on a block in order to achieve consensus, so that we can be sure that money was only spent once, but also in general that all of the transactions are approved by the network. So the way this works is the validators are going to cast their votes on the proposed block here, and if we have a supermajority, a 2/3 of total votes, then that proposed block has been verified. Now, the thing about a proof-of-stake network is that not all votes are created equal. We've talked a lot about the concept of staking. Staking is essentially the SOL holders' ways of approving of different validators on the network. So we have SOL holders who have a bunch of SOL, and we can stake that SOL onto different validators. So different validators are going to have different amount of SOL staked. We might have one with a few coins staked and one with a whole lot of coins staked. Well, those that have the most stake are going to get more votes. The votes are weighted based on the staking on that validator. So if one validator has 1,000 SOL staked and the other one has 100,000 SOL staked, this validator's votes are going to be worth 100 times that of the other validator. It's another way that staking ultimately is an approval method for us as SOL holders to look at a validator and approve of what that validator is doing as it regards to participation and contributions to the Solana network. So achieving that 2/3 supermajority on the votes is what achieves consensus. And consensus gives us a few different goals. First of all, it confirms the transactions that are made on the network. As we've said, that's going to be very important. But it's not just the transactions that were made, it's also the order of transactions. We're trying to remove a single device, like a dishonest validator, from doing damage to the network. And so we not only want to validate that the transactions in this proposed block are valid, but also the order of transactions. And ultimately, we want to prevent any kind of malicious activity from happening on the network. If this dishonest validator wants to try to steal money in some way by manipulating the order of transactions, well, that's a real problem on a decentralized network. And so we need a mechanism like consensus in order to secure the transactions that are being put out there. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, and always remember to stake at the lake.